The document ends with a note of hope. It's easy to get caught up, I guess, with despairing statistics that come out every day in the media. But as people of God, we work from a faith perspective. We're called to act with hope and do what's possible.
We just have to, be part of it. We have to be aware that there's a disaster happening and it's ongoing. It's not something that's just passing through. It is a crisis that's happening in the total earth.
One of the interesting things is that, in fact, all kinds of solutions exist. Renewable energy sources, ways of living in community. And I think to a certain extent we're aware of those, but we haven't really embraced them on a scale that's required. We need to embrace that on an institutional level, on a governmental level, on a political level, not just the individual level.
It's very hard for us sometimes to connect our action to the consequences. If I go out and drive my car and I pollute, I don't see the connection to climate change. And yet we do know, science can tell us that yes, this all contributes to climate change, and that is causing loss of life, both human and non-human, suffering around the world, and it will cause more. So that's the challenge we have.
When you consider that there are over 6,000 places of worship throughout Ontario, if we could green all of those spaces and thereby influence all the parishioners who go to those spaces, we can have a huge impact on climate change.
What is truly needed is a cultural renewal to put ourselves at the service of a culture of life. We are not called to be bearers of despair, but bearers of hope, which leads to action, which leads to modeling a different way of living in relation to the environment, a way which would be a blessing for those who come after us, for future generations. The 8th theme is entitled Responses to Current Environmental Problems, and it lists a series of principles which need to be taken into consideration if we're going to move forward in a constructive way. It begins by saying there is an urgent need for action. Then it identifies some large areas of need for change on a global and national level in terms of policy development, in terms of international cooperation, in terms of a lowering consumption. We have a great work in front of us because we have not cared well for our environment and we have not lived in a way which is sustainable. But there's time to change. There's an urgency, but there's time to make a difference, to live our relationship with the created world in a way which is sustainable, life-giving for the future.
So just as we need to care for people around us, just as we need respect for life, we also need to care for the environment. We need to, as diocese, as individual parishes, be able to say what are we doing in each of these particular areas and who can we work with to accomplish these goals.
So we're offered here a meditation. Scientists remind us that we are precipitating a vast extinction of the abundance and variety of the web of life. Thomas Berry highlights the religious dimension of the crisis. To wantonly destroy a living species is to silence forever a divine voice. Buildings produce 40% of all greenhouse gases. That's fairly significant into the whole issue of climate change and global warming. And yet, we do have the technologies available to us to actually create carbon neutral buildings, meaning ones that, buildings that actually absorb carbon. So we designed the church, St. Gabriel's, to use less than 50% of the energy of a similar building designed to current code standards. Similarly, with water consumption, we were able to reduce our water consumption over a base building design of similar type by 78%. St. Gabriel's uses the unprecedented decision to place 2/3 of its parking underground and on a 2-acre site. Traditionally, churches in the suburban areas require a minimum of 6 acres, and that's simply because you require so much parking. St. Gabriel's underground parking frees up 50% of the site of the church given over to landscape, which essentially becomes a green roof above the underground parking. In an urban environment, all the asphalt and concrete absorbs the heat energy. They talk about the inversion factor and the heat element effect of holding that heat in the city. One of the benefits of the green roof is all the greenery and the grass and the trees help to transpire that heat energy back into the atmosphere. It also absorbs water during heavy rainstorms and helps that cycle of water being reintroduced into the atmosphere. So that's a really important role that the garden plays. And it has a certain wildness about it, a non-manicured feel to it, which again helps parishioners begin to appreciate the role of wilderness and of ecosystems for the urban context. So here we are at the beginning of the walkway to the St. Gabriel's Church at the threshold of the garden. And what we're going to talk about are the transformative moments in the story of the universe that is pertinent to... St. Gabriel's invites us to re-examine, as people of faith, how we should respond to the major ecological challenges that face us. Because I think people of faith can bring a lot to that conversation in moving us forward to a sustainable future that's worth inheriting.
It's easy to slip into despair when we read about environmental crisis, when we read about deforestation, when we read about rising water levels, climatic shift. It's important to not fall into despair. So one of the simplest things we can do is listen to those people around us who really do have a broader vision and are pointing us a way forward, to support them, to bring people to them, to give them spaces where they can communicate their message and their challenge in such a way that it can be heard.